So we can see a little prayer again, page 7 I think, if you want to just start us in the right direction. The first 2 lines are expressing, kind of reiterating our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings for those of us who are already Buddhists. And the second 2 lines expressing this altruistic kind of purpose for being here together, to listen to the teachings so we can develop our amazing potential so we can be a benefit to others. Roughly speaking. I think it's personal. We can do the Heart Sutra again as well. The second prayer, yeah. No, the third prayer. Refuge Bodhicitta. That's the one. Sangye charan soke chognam la, jancho badu dagni kyapsu chi, dagi chonyen gipa sanan ki, drola pinche sangye drupa shog, sangye charan soke chognam la, jancho badu dagni kyapsu chi, dagi chonyen gipa sanan ki, drola pinche sangye drupa shog. In English, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the merits I create by listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. Let's pretend we're in Raj gear, sitting on Vajra Peak up in the sky, with the Buddha, looking out. Page 5. Remember, you see, when we understand this Buddhist view, that every thought counts. We don't think thoughts count. We don't think thoughts matter. We think we're just kind of rabbiting on a load of nonsense, you know, and we don't have any sense that it's like sowing seeds. I mean, if you have a handful of seeds and you're, at a patch of earth, and every second you're pouring seeds onto the earth, you should be quite anxious, because you know they're going to bring fruit, so you better damn well know which seed you're planting. We don't think that way. It's so, we think my mind's my mind, I can think what I like, nothing, in other words, those seeds bring results. That's kind of schizophrenic, that's kind of nihilistic, you know. So when you have a sense of calmness, you have an incredible sense of urgency, you want to become aware of your mind, and you know every thought counts. So when we think of meditation as kind of like only concentration, I'm not being rude here, only shamatha, we've got to calm the mind down, blah, 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 all those things, which is utterly necessary. Buddha says you can't get enlightened until you have that. But we think that's all meditation is, when we think, just thoughts, wasting time, it's not. On the contrary, having, a few thoughts about the Buddha, they leave seeds in your mind. They leave seeds in your mind. I don't care if you feel good or not. The seeds bring fruits. But we're so obsessed with feeling good, We're so obsessed with feelings. It's not the only reason we do it. I'm just saying it can be easy, and the world's view of mindfulness is completely that. We are just complete junkies. As long as we feel good, we think it must be good. But you can sit there feeling miserable with a headache and say one prayer with the word Buddha in it. You created infinite more merit and purified your mind more powerfully than watching your breath for 1,000,000 years. I'm not being sarcastic, We've got to think about these things. It's not evident to us. So by reading words, that's practice. You're putting those seeds in your mind. When we know that, we'll be delighted. Just thinking a nice thought. I wish everyone could be so happy. I mean, my God, that's incredible, that thought. Just so easy to have good thoughts. We never bother, Thoughts count. So reading something, it counts. We don't leave seeds. So we better be careful what seeds we plant. And when we do plant good ones, be so happy. So let's plant a few seeds to realise emptiness. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on mass of Vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration of the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokitesvara, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokitesvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokitesvara, said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this: correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odour, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth since it's not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should... I thought it was a hidden... start again. The mantra of the perfection is declared. Tayata Om Gato Gato Paragato Parasamgato Bodhi Svaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokitesvara, and those surrounding in their entirety along with the world of gods, humans, asuras and gandharvas were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So what that's saying, I mean, we'll talk about it maybe, well who knows, might talk about it now, we'll see. But basically it's implying Buddha's whole approach. Like we said yesterday, Buddhism, we can say for sure, it is an entire presentation of ethics. It is absolutely that. It is absolutely a method for stopping suffering and getting happiness. And it is a method of stopping ignorance and getting wisdom. But they all come to the same thing. They all come to exactly the same thing. And that's something, like I mentioned yesterday, that we don't figure out. We have the idea of wisdom we get, when we revere brilliant scientists, brilliant artists, brilliant musicians. We do that. They are the top people in our culture, Wisdom. But in our culture, wisdom would necessarily have nothing to do with ethics. In other words, you can be the most genius mathematician, like I said yesterday, and go home and beat up your husband. And no one sees that as a contradiction. But that's demented for Buddha. That's just not on. It's not reasonable. It's not valid. That's not wisdom. That's just clever. That's cleverness, knowing how to do things. Animals can do things far better than we can. They can fly in the sky, for God's sake. We can't do that. That's just clever. It's being clever. Using our conceptual mind to be clever. If it's helpful to others, that's a bit better cleverness. But the point is the Buddhist view of morality and ethics comes hand in hand with wisdom. Because why, as we've been talking, and let's do this again more, this is the crux of Buddhist psychology, the crux of the entire path, the crux of Buddha's approach to life. As we discussed, we've got the mental consciousness. And in this mental consciousness, a very simple way of putting it, there's trillions, at this level we function, of thoughts. Remember, they're all conceptual stories. We live at the conceptuality, at the level of our mental consciousness. But our sensory, that's one thing. Like I said, the dumb animals, with respect to dumb animals, profoundly limited in their capacity for cognition, like we talked yesterday. But we give them so much power that they don't have. Complete mistake. It's the mental consciousness. And at the level we function, it's conceptuality. We live at the level of thoughts. It's all concepts, including all the emotions. The emotions, as we understand, which we just are talking about the body shaking and the heart beating and the feelings being aching, you know, but they're just the symptoms of these very deeply held, very anciently practiced conceptual stories. They're all conceptual stories. So our mental consciousness at this gross level is full of conceptual stories. So, when we look at the mind, this presentation of the contents of mental consciousness, we have three categories of states of mind. There's no fourth. There are all these trillions of thoughts in there. It's an astonishing kind of way to think about it. Just three categories. It's amazing. There are those that are ridiculous, fear-based, neurotic, delusional, ridiculous, disturbing. Lama lists 21 synonyms, you know. Misconceptions, fantasy puzzles, dualistic, superstitions. The Buddha says are a load of rubbish, and guess what, baby? Because they're a load of rubbish, they can be gotten rid of. We've got to understand this logic, and that's what we can do now. We'll talk about this. So the point about this too, they have two functions. They make us completely miserable, and they cause us to be completely living in la-la land. Therefore, they are ignorance. So wisdom is what you get when you give up the delusions. You get happiness when you give up delusions, and you get wisdom, because they come to the same thing. It's so clear when you hear it this way. That's the Buddha's view. So clear, so logical. And how you do that? You practice ethics first. All linked together. Ethics, happiness, and wisdom all come to the same thing. Very tasty. The main one, if you want to say the main one, we're not discussing compassion here, okay? This is the wisdom wing. Is the one of wisdom. Buddha basically saying we're not in touch with reality. Having delusions, the extent to which we are caught up in attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, all the other 84,997 of them, the extent to which we're caught up in any of those is the extent to which, one, we suffer, and therefore harm others, and two, are not in touch with reality. The key one is not in touch with reality. This is a weird way to put things. You know, to say that you're angry and you're not in touch with reality doesn't make sense. To say that you've got attachment, to say that you're jealous and you're not in touch with reality, it's kind of confusing. We don't get it, so we have to understand it. So if I'm angry with somebody, why am I not in touch with reality? What do you mean reality? Excuse me, he did punch me. What do you mean? I am in touch with reality. That's not what Buddha's saying. He doesn't argue that someone punched me. He's not arguing that Fred punched me. Fred did punch me, you saw it. That's not wrong. That's not wisdom. That's wisdom, that's clear. Wisdom is what's correct, in the simplest sense. The fact that he punched me is true, you saw it. That's true, that's tick the box, true. So what does Buddha mean? Anger is causing you to be not in touch with reality. Well, very simple. Because these delusions, by the very word delusion, they're embellishments. They're exaggerations, they're distortions, they're decorations, they're added bells and whistles. So the simple fact, conventionally, someone punched me. There's two things going on. One is the reason it's happening, why is it happening to me? Buddha says karma, that's the one. But then the other one is delusion. So how does it function? So anger is a delusion insofar as it's an embellishment of reality. So the reality is, yes, he punched me, but that's not the reality he's talking about here. He's saying that anger, what anger is thinking, anger is over-exaggerating the role of that punch in my suffering. It is over-exaggerating the role of that punch in my suffering. This is really hard to hear. What does he mean? Well, first cause, the main reason you got punched is because you punched first, baby. That's the main reason. So that's even why you get punched in the first place, which already calms your mind down. But even forget that one. Why did I get punched? Let's just look at the punch. It's true he punched. It's true you got a bloody nose. It's true. But the simple point is this is to get to the end result. If you didn't have attachment and you didn't have ego grasping, therefore you wouldn't have anger. Therefore a person can punch you, but you wouldn't suffer. That's it, very simple. You'd have a bloody nose, but you'd laugh. You'd get out of the way, silly person. And also even more simple, this is proving emptiness. When I'm in Kung Fu, I got punched regularly. Well, I was taught by Mr. Lee, my Kung Fu teacher, you apologise. I apologise to you because I didn't get out of the way in time. And you don't get upset when you get punched in Kung Fu, you laugh, So it proves that punching is not the cause of happiness. It's not the cause of suffering, it's proof. It's proof. I didn't mind getting punched in Kung Fu. You laugh, you talk to each other, you don't get mad. You laugh at each other. Oh, you got me. So it's proof that a punch is not the cause of suffering. Right there, it's true. We know it's true. We prove it ourselves, right there. So anger is an over-exaggerated assessment of the object that sees its ugly qualities, and in this case here, therefore believes that's why I'm suffering. That's what anger is, and it has no valid basis. This is a shocking concept to us. Excuse me. He did punch me, and in those terms it wasn't Kung Fu, it wasn't agreed upon. The punch came out of the blue, I didn't expect it. So first when you know about karma, then you accept the punch, but even forget that one. The function of the delusions is to exaggerate. So what's left if you throw away anger? That's the thing. Let's think of being angry when you see other people suffering. That really sounds very noble anger to us. We assume that when you see suffering, you must get angry. We assume that. So what we do is conflating compassion with anger. So the reality is, there is a war, let's say, somewhere, and you read about it, and you rise up, oh my God, look at that suffering. Now that's compassion. Right there, that's compassion. You have empathy for the suffering. That's compassion. That's a valid state of mind. Because your heart is reaching out to these other people. Because a valid state of mind is one that's in touch with interdependence. And virtues are in touch with interdependence. So that's valid. That's a valid state of mind. So where's the lie then? What we do is immediately, because we have a view in our culture, and this is also where wrong views fit in, not just the emotions, but for example, we have a philosophical view, which we learned from the scientists in our mummy, that they're innocent victims, and the people who caused it are the naughty ones, so they are the cause of why they're suffering, therefore it is correct to be angry with them and have compassion for them. That's the philosophy we live in. That's a philosophy. Now that's a viewpoint, that's a world view, that's a view of the world. Buddha disagrees with it. The world is full of viewpoints. Aborigines have a viewpoint. American Indians have a viewpoint. A world view, someone's a world view, not just individual viewpoints. Christians, Jews, everybody, you look around. There are a bunch of viewpoints on this planet, all coming from the human mind. And that's fine. So our job is to find out which ones are in sync with reality. That's as scary as hell to us, because that sounds like religion, The Buddha says, no, you can find out what is true. And he's saying once you find out what is true, once you see truth, see reality, see things as they are, that's what brings happiness. Because you remove the delusion, you remove the bells and whistles. So here, the other one, so then why do we have, so anger also, it's lying in various ways. Anger is lying, first and foremost, in the way that it exaggerates Fred's role, Fred's punch's role in my suffering. It exaggerates that. You can say that it is one of the causes. There are many causes. There are main causes and there are secondary causes. So the seed is the main cause of the flower, but the secondary cause is the earth and the water and the blah. We can see that, and they've got to come together. Well, the same with the punch. The main cause, the Buddha would say, is my past punch, and then second, the main cause of my suffering is, right now, is my anger. They're the two, in me now, this moment. But definitely Fred's punch does have a function in my suffering, but it's a secondary cause. If you like, it's merely a catalyst. It's a catalyst that triggers my unhappy feeling. Suffering is called an unhappy feeling. I do have an unhappy feeling, it's called suffering. Suffering is another word for unhappy feeling. And the punch is a catalyst. First there's a logic for the punch, that's one thing. So the lie is, that when I say anger is a lie because it says, how dare you do that to me, Fred? I don't deserve it. That's a clear statement. It's a clear conceptual story. Write it down and let's analyse it. It's a conceptual story. It's a belief in my mind. It's an invalid belief, Buddha says, because guess what, Robina? The main cause of you being punched now is because you punched Fred in the past, he hasn't worked on his mind, so he meets you again and punches right back. So the main cause of the punch the main cause of my suffering isn't Fred's punch, it's a catalyst. The main cause is my past punch. So when we know that, anger ceases right there. Just by thinking about karma, anger ceases. Pretty much. Not all the way, but it's subdued. Because you no longer say, how dare you do that to me, I don't deserve it. And that thought is the cause of the suffering. That thought is the distress and the anguish and the tears and the hurt and the pain and the ego having a panic attack. All of that is what is the suffering. That is the suffering. So the main cause of my suffering is my anger and my past action. Logical. This is Buddha's analysis. Logic within this framework. No one says you have to believe it or even accept it. I'm not asking you to. I'm presenting it. So getting in touch with those concepts precisely with analysis and practice every day is what practice every day is. And eventually what's the result? You get punched in the nose and you don't suffer. It's logical. Suffering doesn't mean a bloody nose. Suffering isn't being sad. Suffering isn't seeing suffering. That's called compassion. A bloody nose is a bloody nose. When you're a high body sufferer, I'll never forget Curtis and Rinpoche. I think he must have come here at one point. He's passed away now. Curtis and Rinpoche. I'll never forget these words. To show that some level of bodhisattva, which we'll talk about. And he said, for that bodhisattva, the action of cutting off his hand and feeding it to a starving animal is as inconsequential as a leaf falling off a tree. So what's the logic of this? Well, the logic of that, for this person, for example, at a certain level, they have completely gone beyond attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, therefore completely cut the root of the cause of it all, which is ego grasping, the ridiculous sense of a separate self, which is all nonsense. They have been cut, gone. No longer in the mind, no longer those assumptions. They have gone like a dream into a puff of smoke. Not only that, but unbelievable bodhicitta, unbelievable compassion, unbelievable sense of responsibility to help sentient beings. So technically you could say that person, the bodhisattva, she knows there's some pain, she feels a feeling, she's got a body, there's a cut hand off, there's a stump there. But because there's no ego grasping, there's no fear, and because there's unbelievable compassion, you're not even paying attention to it. It's like nothing, a leaf falling off a tree. This is logic. Because there's such compassion. That's what's prevailing in the mind. This is logical. We can become like this. Okay, don't hold your breath. One step at a time, please. Don't try to give your hand off, don't cut your hand off too soon. We get this in ordinary life. I remember seeing a movie one time, a documentary about what mothers do in dire situations to save their children. Okay, we've got attachment there too, but it's logical. One mother ran into a burning house. So what's happening in the mind? Think about it. Compassion for her child, all she can think of, all that's in her mind is her baby in that house. That's all she can think of. If you think about it, the second she thinks, oh my God, I'm running into a burning house, oh, I can't do that. She would not have run into a burning house, but it didn't occur to her. All she's focused on is the compassion. Okay, she's got attachment, she'll suffer when she gets burned. But suffering not possible. Suffering is impossible because you cut the causes. The cause of suffering. Actually in the past, but the key one is the delusions. Once they're gone, suffering is gone. This is so hard to hear. Because we give equal status to all these states of mind. We think you're a normal human being if you have anger and fear and drama and PSDS and DDID and bipolar and God knows what. This is the logic of Buddhist psychology. Hard to hear, but kind of exciting. Who wouldn't want to be like that? Who wouldn't want to be fearless? Who wouldn't want to be blissful all the time? My goodness, I can't wait. The delusions, neurotic states of mind. So there's a whole bunch of the emotional ones. Then we go into other viewpoints. They're all viewpoints, finally. You know, I hate you, you're the cause of my suffering is a viewpoint. It's an opinion. It also happens to have a lot of emotional component. The body shaking, the heart beating. Attachment is a viewpoint. The opposite exaggerates completely Fred's divineness, such that I faint even at the thought of Fred. Not to mention when he gets within my eyesight. Not to mention when he begins to touch me. That's all because of attachment. It's not because of love, I promise you. That's why your mummies, you know, look at their baby. Attachment's saying this, like you're in love with your baby. It's very simple. I'm not being horrible. where we start to look into the difference between the virtues and the non-virtues. So your mum's got attachment, unbelievable attachment for her baby. If you have a photo of 1,000 babies, right there your mother, she will immediately see her baby right there. It'll be shining like vibrating, delicious light in the photo. She'll know immediately there's my baby, you know. You know that. Okay, karmic connection and attachment. It happens to be, if she also happens to have access to her love and virtue, then she'll be a good mother. If she doesn't have much love and virtue, then, excuse me, her attachment won't last. Because when you start shitting in the middle of the night and crying and screaming, if she has no love, that's when she kills you. That's when she chucks you in the bin. Because attachment can't cope with problems. But at least if we have love, that's our saving grace. So Mummy does love us. But if she did, I promise you, if she didn't have attachment, and you squall and yell all day and shit in your pants all day and don't behave, she won't have much love for you. I'm sorry. Love is very difficult when someone's not doing what you want. Love is may you be happy. Love is a delight and a joy. So when the baby's sleeping like an angel, your heart is weeping. The same with a boyfriend. That's not love, that's attachment. That's love mixed with attachment. So imagine being a mother without attachment. That would be like any kid on the street, smelly kid next door, you bring them home and you love them as the same as your baby. We know that's like impossible until you hardly realise, because there's no attachment there. That's impossible. That's why I'm glad my mother had attachment for me. She would have killed me otherwise. Do you understand? Do you understand? Just as well. Phew. She said I was gorgeous no matter what. She defended me all the time. I'll never forget when she did my homework for me one time. And she wrote a poem. I was supposed to write a poem. She's always feeling sorry for me, you know. She had a berserk family. She always felt poor Bobsy, you know, always felt sorry for me. And I was just lazy. And she wrote a poem. And of course she put a word in that I didn't understand. The teacher caught it. So, you know, it was pretending to be kind. That wasn't kind. It was attachment. Do you understand? My father, even though my daddy was naughty, my father had so much more wisdom than my mother. I'd always noticed him. I knew I could never fool him. I always fooled my mother. I knew I could get her around my middle finger, you know, I knew that. My daddy, I knew I couldn't fool him. He'd always say, she has to learn from your experience. And I'd hear it. And I was too proud to ask what he meant. And I struggled to hear what he meant. I thought I knew there was something in there, but I couldn't get it. I didn't want to ask, what do you mean, Daddy? She has to learn from her experience, he said. That's so wise, you know. I tried to think what he meant. I couldn't get it. She has to learn from her experience. I'll never forget it. That's attachment. So attachment and all the delusions, they're the ones that are moment by moment. But they're not the only wrong views. Buddha says a wrong view, and don't hear it as fundamentalist. He's allowed to say it's a wrong view. He's not being rude. If you say 1 + 1 is 3, that's a wrong view. But no one says, you know, don't you dare insult me and tell me I've got a wrong view. You're happy if someone tells you you've got a wrong view because you won't get the right answer. But when it's religion, you get nervous, you know. So Buddha's allowed to say what's right and what's wrong. He's allowed to. It's up to whether you want to work with it and discover it's true or not. But the trouble is our view with religion is if someone told you it's right, you have to believe it. No logic like that here. So, he says our mind is riddled with wrong views. There are a whole bunch that are like philosophical views about the way the world is, like karma, creator, materialism. They're philosophical presentations of how things exist in the bigger picture point of view. Buddha doesn't disagree with all the Christian views. He doesn't disagree with all the materialist views. There's lots of common ground. But certain fundamentals, his views are very different. And he would give his logical arguments. Why, you know? I mean, the texts over the centuries are full of all these logical arguments. They have debates all the time, using logic to argue with these misconceptions. Not just to believe what is true, but to prove what is true. In the big monasteries, you know, in India, like Nalanda Monastery, where we go on our pilgrimage, we go there every year. Near Volta Peak. Massive. It was flourishing 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever century. And unfortunately, when the Muslims came along, it got destroyed. In the 11th century, it collapsed. That's when Buddhism collapsed in India completely. But this massive place, where there's like more than 10,000, mostly monks, of course. I suppose a few girls got in, pretending to be a boy, you know. It's the only way they could get in. But meanwhile, it was a place where there's this unbelievable place of study, unbelievable. 10,000 more people studying there, all levels of Buddhism, all the levels of Buddhism. And the only way to get in was you had to debate with the gatekeeper. You had to debate. And debate was so serious there, it wasn't just being smarty pants debate like political debate. but logic, using logic. And the debate was considered so powerful, used logic about reality, that if you lost the debate, you would accept the other person's right, and you would accept their position. Well, not just political, you know, it's trying to prove truth. It's kind of powerful. So of course we think that's the mathematicians and the philosophers. No, not in philosophy. That's an interesting point. Okay, in our culture, philosophy is like, it's considered fairly low, I think. Psychology and philosophy aren't really trusted. We like the hard sciences. They're kind of real. They're the top sciences, aren't they? The others are a bit wishy-washy. Even philosophy is kind of wishy-washy. There's ideas about how things are, but and you're allowed to, and you should have as many of these as possible, be very wise, and sit there thinking about the meaning of things, but you would never practice any of them. This is a very interesting point. You would never dare to do that. Jeffrey Hopkins, Professor Jeffrey Hopkins, when he started when he was first appointed the professor of the first kind of, not the first, but he was the first Buddhist practitioner to be appointed the professor at this school when it was in 1976, he told me, when this Tibetan Buddhist, course of study in North Carolina, South Carolina, somewhere, I forget, Charlottesville. So because he was a practitioner, he said it was considered a school of philosophy, philosophical thinking, but he was considered inferior by his colleagues because he practiced it. That's considered too subjective, you know. That's very bizarre. In other words, we revere, and there's only really theory, because we don't trust the subjective. We don't trust the subjective because you can get too caught up in something. You think you don't have any common sense. That's why we have to have a hard science like microscopes, to see truth. Buddha's view of truth is internal, and is used. The mind is what sees truth, And so philosophy, Buddhism is a philosophy, but you must practice it. It's like schizophrenic. If you don't, imagine learning a whole bunch of cake recipes. Oh, please make me a cake. Oh no, that's subjective. I wouldn't do that. I'm being philosophical here. I'm giving you theories. How boring. Of course you practice, you put your money where your mouth is. But that's our view in our culture. But in other words, philosophy is this open-ended. There's never an answer. It's open-ended. That to me is like drowning in depression, If there's no answer in the end, why bother wasting your time thinking about it? It doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't lead to seeing truth. Why bother thinking about it? So Buddha's saying things do exist a certain way. And everyone can learn to see it. It's right there. It's natural law. He did not make it up. He is not a creator. He is not shoving his truth down our throats. He is saying it is how it is. And this is again the point about natural law. 1 plus 1 has always been 2. As long as time exists, if you take the definition of 1, you take the definition of plus, you accept the definition of equals, and you accept the definition of 2, you'll always prove that 1 plus 1 is 2. It's truth. It's conventional truth. Even if, before that, I think that Mr. Arab gentleman who made up the numbers, 0 to 9, wasn't it? Before that it was the silly old Romans with their X's and B's and L's. Isn't this true? But I think other people before the Arabs, way back before that. But that's always been true. Botany, the growing of things in the ground, has always been the way it is. Before anybody articulated those laws. To articulate the laws isn't creating botany, it's simply articulating what's already there. So natural law is what is already there. Emptiness is right there. Impermanence is right there. Karma is right here. It is how it is, Buddha says. He didn't make it up. He didn't get it and put it on top of things. That's what we think of religious truth, and that is religious truth. That's what God made it up. Not the Buddha. It's reality. It's there. And he's just giving us a method of how to see what already is there. Delusions have decorated on top of what is already there, layers upon characteristics that aren't there. That's our job of being a Buddhist, to remove not the stuff on top of it doesn't exist there, but to remove the lies that are projecting permanence onto an impermanent cup. A simple example, if I'm colourblind, I think that's yellow. It is red. Red is reality. We'd agree. Why is it reality? Not because we force it to be red. That's the name we give to that colour based upon the conventional reality of light and the way things are in this universal world, like botany. It's that within the laws of this world, Red is what that is. We've given it the name red, based upon the actual way the world is. That's the name we've given it. So it is not, therefore, yellow. So if I believe it's yellow, I've got a lie in my mind that's decorating on top of red a characteristic that isn't there. Yellow isn't there. So seeing the truth is already there. So you don't try to find the truth. Where's the truth? The truth is there. You remove the lie and the truth is revealed. Oh, look at that. It's always been red. You see people? Are you? I presume you mean yes. This is how Buddha's talking. So the job of getting enlightened, this is why ignorance, maripa, the root delusion, okay, the root delusion, the one that's the mother of them all, it's the cause of all suffering, all universes, all hell, all heaven, all gods, all everything. It's all a load of rubbish, it's all made up nonsense, all embarrassments, all rubbish. We've created it over eons. And the root of the problem is this ridiculous maripa, unawareness, ignorance, but it's double trouble ignorance. Right, just like that. This ignorance not only doesn't know the truth that that's red, this ignorance has imposed a lie on top of it and believes it's yellow. So the job isn't to try to see the job is to see reality, but the way to do it is to get rid of the lies. That's the Buddhist approach to practice. From here to Buddhahood, it's a process of getting rid of the lies. And then in the Bodhisattva path, you enhance the virtues. When you realize emptiness, you've gotten rid of the lies. But you can do a lot more. You can enhance the virtues by practicing bodhicitta over countless lifetimes. So the first level of practice of removing the lies is to have the view of karma. Consciousness is not physical. It's a beginningless and endless continuity of mental moments. It is not the handiwork of creator or mummy or daddy. It is not a function of the brain. It functions interdependently with the brain, but not a function of the brain. It's one's own, and whatever's in it, I put there. And some stuff I put there has come from negative actions, which ripens as my suffering, and some stuff I put in that mind ripens as happiness. And I don't want suffering and do want happiness. This is all based upon this logical thing of cause and effect. This is reality, Buddha says. He's not asking us to believe him. He says creator is not reality. He says materialism that money made you is not reality. There are some truths there. There are some truths in Christianity. He's not arguing with some of the truths. With the Hindus, he went as far as he could go. He didn't argue with their stuff. He just went further, he suggests. He suggests that. Not to believe him. So the cause of all suffering is in the mind. So one of the bunches of lies we've got is, so that's counteracted by thinking about karma. That counteracts lies, which brings truth, which therefore lessens suffering. Because seeing truth lessens suffering. Having lies grows suffering. That's already part of the process of seeing truth. Then we move to the next level, we get to the root of the problem, which is the delusions themselves. And then we put the branch delusion, not the root one, that comes later. We have to identify all these emotional, disturbing thoughts, ignorance and attachment and jealousy and all these dramas. They're lies, but so is no cause and effect a lie. So is a creator a lie. So is believing in Mother Nature a lie. We're counteracting with karma. These lies that we have here, we're counteracting these are the emotional lies that have the emotion, which is the pain of daily suffering while we kill and lie and harm each other. They're the consequences of no karma. They're the consequences of not having a view of cause and effect. These are the consequences, and they're the dire consequences, the emotional delusions. Which is why we have to first start with karma to control our body and speech, at least control the servants of the delusions, stop creating more trouble. Now we get to the root of it and see two things. The first level is see how they're disturbing. That's the first one. If we can begin to see that anger disturbs me, that should be enough reason to stop being angry. We don't even have to see yet that they're lies. That's more subtle. So the characteristic of the emotions, these are unhappy emotions, is that they're disturbing. That should be enough for us to stop being jealous. That should be enough to stop harming. That should be enough to stop being angry. That's powerful already. But the deeper one is that they're liars. They're liars. They're liars. And these are the branch, and they function in the same way as the root delusion, which is the root lie. They impose upon what is there things that aren't there. Attachment imposes deliciousness where it doesn't exist. Anger, aversion imposes ugliness that doesn't exist there. All the delusions lie like that. They lie to us. And they're all coming from the root, And they're all coming because of all the other lies as well. They're all linked together, you know, the whole kind of view. The view of permanence, the view of no causes, the view of not fair, I'm not fair, I didn't ask to get born, all that stuff. They're all lies in our mind. They're lies in our mind, and that's why we suffer. Attachment is a lie, which is why we suffer. Anger is a lie, which is why we suffer. This is how Buddha's talking. So the job of stopping suffering is to get wisdom. The job of getting happiness is to get wisdom. The job of, you know, and getting wisdom is part of that is having ethics. So it's all linked. It's a completely holistic view, you know. So when we get to the Bodhisattva path, when we get to the 6 perfections, the last stages of the 6 perfections is where the last 2 are where Buddha presents finally the ultimate view, how things ultimately exist. In fact, it's a high school teaching. It's a middle scope teaching. If you're practicing junior school and high school, which is the wisdom wing, and you want to achieve your own nirvana, your own liberation from suffering, you complete high school by realizing emptiness, as we discussed yesterday. You control your body and speech, live in vows, do purification, you then begin to harness and unpack and unravel the delusions, and you get to the root delusion, you realise emptiness in one life, and you're ready, you've removed all the rubbish, you've achieved your liberation, and when you die that life, you zap off into bliss, you're done, you're finished, you're out of here, you're gone, you're finished, that's it. But on the Bodhisattva path, you can realise emptiness then, but it's not taught there. You then go to the Bodhisattva path, and compassion, you get bodhicitta, then you go to the 6 perfections, where you perfect the compassion wing, the first 4 of the 6, then you perfect the wisdom wing, the last 2 of the 6. That's when we learn shamatha, single-point concentration. That's a Hindu teaching, don't even a Buddhist one, which you learned in high school. If you're getting nirvana, but you study it here, and then you use that shamatha, that karma binding, that laser-like focus to realise emptiness, to cut the root of all the delusions, to cut the root of all the lies. All the lies stem from this one, psychologically, philosophically. It's a coherent view. It's coherent within itself. It is not coherent if you try to squeeze it into into materialism. It is not coherent if you try to squeeze it into Christianity. They're different philosophical presentations. But it's coherent within itself. Everything's interdependent, everything's contingent, isn't it? All the views are linked. It's a what's that word we use? We're trying to find what's that word? The scientists are trying to find a whole view that fits everything. What's that called? A single view. What's the word? Quick, tell me. What? No, there's a word, there's a term. Unified theory. Buddhism is a unified theory. I'm not asking you to believe me. It's a unified theory of the universe. That's what Buddhism is. That means everything links to the other. You hear this, it's because of this, and the other is because of, and you get this. Because when every time you hear about the mind, oh, that helps about karma. Every time you hear about karma, oh, that helps with the mind. When you think that, oh, that helps with emptiness. When you think that, oh, that helps with bodhicitta, they're all linked. It's a coherent view. They're all linked. It's a coherent view. We don't have to believe it. It's up to us to find out. Buddha's allowed to say that this is true. Einstein is allowed to say that relativity is true. No one will go and hang him for being a fundamentalist. He's allowed to say it. Then he says, here's my findings, over to you, baby. That's the Buddha. Not, you better believe me. Not that, not that, not that. That's ignorance. He's not being rude. It's up to us to use our noggins to check it up. One baby step at a time, you know. So, one marvellous way that Tsongkhapa, our 14th century lineage Lama, our 14th century patron saint, if you like, presents Lord Buddha's teachings about emptiness is in the framework of the 2 truths. His beautiful prayer, I wish we had it and we can recite it together, in praise of dependent arising. Maybe I'll read it to you. We can do it later, don't worry. When Tsongkhapa finally came to his recognition of the meaning of dependent arising emptiness, it was blissed out. There's beautiful poetic verses praising Buddha for his teachings about dependent arising. The king of logic, says Lama Yeshe says, to prove emptiness. the king of logics to prove reality finally. So, okay. This is now getting to your point. You asked me, right? About the one view about emptiness. Isn't it? We'll get into that now. Nihilism. So the two truths, so-called, different ways of presenting. But the way of presenting here is that everything in the universe that exists, every phenomenon, every conventional phenomenon, and we know there are trillions of conventional phenomena, and every day we're creating new ones. I can always think of Steve Jobs. Look at the new phenomena that have come into the universe since Steve Jobs. Just the apps alone, and all the things that have come from apps, all the new things that we didn't know about before Steve Jobs came along with his brilliant ideas. You get my point? And this is what Buddha says over eons. We are doing this all the time. We're creating reality. We're creating new things. And it all comes from concepts. That's really logical when you think of something like Steve Jobs. This brilliant mind that thought and came out and produced products, produced things as a result of his thinking. And look, since then, his clever minds jumping on the wagon, you know, and some of this new business. No, Steve Jobs didn't anticipate apps. It just sort of grew. So look at the world. You look at the world now. I'm sure double the number of phenomena on the planet, you know, since he came up. We're doing it all the time, and we can see we make things up. That's what Buddha says. Everything is we make things up. Over eons, we make things up. We make up universes. We make up bodies. Everything comes from concepts. Pretty abstract concept for us. So anyway. There are conventional truths, conventional phenomena, and there are the way things exist conventionally, and there are the way things exist ultimately. And everything that does exist exists in those two ways. A cup has a conventional reality, and it has an ultimate reality. So everything that exists, tissues, pee-pee, caca, Hitler, thermos, you know, dog, me, toe, whatever, have a conventional reality and an ultimate reality. And the aim is to see the ultimate reality, to cut the lies that prevent us from seeing that. But the way to ground it is in terms of seeing it in the framework of the two truths of conventional reality. And then, as Tsongkhapa says, we'll never fall into the abyss of the great mistake, nihilism. So I'll explain. So the words are like this. Things exist, the way things exist ultimately, the shorthand is the word emptiness. How things exist conventionally, the shorthand is the term dependent arising. There's many variations of that. Buddhist slogan, as His Holiness said. So that's shorthand for how things exist conventionally. Emptiness is shorthand for how things exist ultimately. So obviously we have to unpack those concepts. Clear, it's obvious. So, right now Buddha says, this is reality. Everything that exists has these two ways of existing. But right now, because of ego grasping, because of all the lies that engenders, all the misconceptions about permanence, misconceptions about no cause and effect, misconceptions about all the delusions, all the misconceptions that have branched out from the ego grasping, all the layers of lies we've imposed upon reality, because of this ego grasping and all the lies, we can't hear it. So when we hear emptiness, what we hear is nothingness. When we hear dependent arising, what we hear is somethingness. So there's either something or there's nothing. It's like this, you know. There's either something or there's nothing. Buddha says it's more nuanced than that, folks. But we get annoyed. Make up your mind, Buddha. Is there an I or isn't there? Give us a break. Give us the answer. Is there an I or isn't there? And he says there is an I, but not the way we think. Lama Zopa says, when we've understood emptiness, of I, let's say, or of cup, same thing, when we've understood emptiness, it's as if there's no I. But there is an I. But what does exist is so subtle. It's as if there's no I. And he's not being tricky. These are valid experiences of the yogis, you know, and we have to get this. But in the beginning, we just hear it as I don't I, and there's not an I. And then even the words, there is no, these are the words, there is no I from its own side. There is not one atom of I here. There is no self, no I. Not one atom of anything here makes this an I. So logically we go, oh, well, there's no I, right. No, Buddha says, you got it wrong, babe. There is an I. Well, make up your mind. So every time we see there's no I, we chuck out, we fall down the abyss of the great mistake, we chuck the baby out of the bathwater, oh, there's no I might as well kill myself. Or the other, when we hear dependent arising, there is an I that depends upon things. Oh, you mean there is an I? Oh, thank God, grasp. Then we do this primordially and instinctively. It's just the way delusions cause us to function. We don't know this because who ever thought of this stuff before? The mistake is deep in our bones, so we have to watch our minds like a hawk. So Tsongkhapa says the best way to prevent that is to see everything in the framework of the two truths. They kind of ground each other. You never fall into the abyss of the great mistake. So okay, let's unpack all that. Okay, so what the Buddha is saying is, there are things conventional, that have a name, a function, and then when we have that and we all agree there's a cup, there's a thick tissue, so you say, pass me a cup, I won't pass you a tissue. Well, they're very confused if that happens. I'll pass you the cup. Why? Because we've all agreed what a cup is. We've all agreed, we've all bought into it, we've all ticked the boxes and signed the contract, we all agree that's a cup. So how come we did? What do we have to do first? And we have to understand how cups exist, and eyes exist, and camellias exist. We've got to be clear about what they are, even conventionally first. Which means we have to establish the existence of a cup. So when you first start, when you study Buddhist philosophy, you learn various synonyms for that which exists, for the entire universe. That which exists, the word is phenomenon. One of the terms for that which exists is a phenomenon. So whatever exists is a phenomenon. Whatever exists is an object, not physical. An object is a name given to whatever exists. An object of knowledge is another synonym. An established base is another synonym. An existent is another synonym. And that must be more. I think that's 5. Maybe there's more. I can't remember. Excuse me. So, okay. If we want to find out how things exist, the first step is to establish what exists, even conventionally, get the right words, the right names, the right labels. So how do you establish something as existing? Well, you have to, let's look at it. Let's use the same example, you know. What's that, Mummy? Darling, it's called a cup. What's a cup, Mummy? Well, sweetie, no, I don't see it. What's a cup, Mummy? Well, see, hey, look over here, darling. It's this flat-bottom clay thing. Can you see it? And I'll see it. Flat bottom, I'll get that. I'll work out the definition of flat bottom. Clay, I'll get that. Container, I'll get that. But I can see what it is. That's its conventional characteristics. That's the first part of a definition. Conventional characteristics, and I see it, but I'm not happy yet because I don't know what it does. This is a really important point. I don't know what its function is. Even more simple, I don't know its meaning. The meaning of something is what its function is, isn't it? What's the meaning of it, Mummy? Well, darling, it holds my tea. Now, no one will believe anything anyone tells, especially Mummy. No! She's got to prove it. You can't just make it up. You've got to prove it. So what does she do? She gets her tea. And she pours. We both see, oh, look at that. It just fit the definition. It fulfills the function. It holds the tea. So she's proved it. But we still shouldn't be happy yet. There's more to do. She's got to now make sure that there's no other valid cognition of such a thing within the world that we live in, you know? If there is, then it's a bit confusing. So as long as we accept that the world, that as we know it, accepts that this is a clay container, or clay or metal, whatever container, that holds your tea. Then you tick the box, you shake hands, you sign the contract, we now agree. We've just established a cup. Now what's interesting is that already proves emptiness. We're a bit slow, we don't get it, we've got to do more thinking. It proves there's no inherent cup, that we made it up. But we have to do more thinking. So we establish it first, there's a cup. Now we can begin to discuss how it exists. So conventionally, the Buddha, the general term is dependent arising. So there's trillions of ways in which things exist interdependently. It's kind of the general term for what the way Buddha says everything exists conventionally is interdependently. Everything exists in dependence upon other things. So there's lots of examples of interdependence. For example, short. It's really obvious. On its own it has no meaning. We know it's in reference to long. That's a really simple example of dependent. Fat has no meaning. It's in reference to thin. Many examples like this. They're simple and obvious. But the way here Buddha presents dependent arising is as specific arguments with the prevailing views at the time, when he went into his own direction. There's 3 levels, each more subtle. The first is the grossest, the second is more subtle, the third is the most subtle and the actual reality of dependent arising. So the first one, it is that everything comes into existence, everything that's impermanent comes into existence in dependence upon lots and lots of causes. We go, yeah, we get that. Big deal. But he says we don't get it. Especially when it comes to the eye. So what's the eye? Okay, we've established a cup. So there's another phenomenon called a tissue, a camellia, a lid. We see this, clock. There's another phenomenon called an eye, or a person, or a self. These words are synonymous. Person, I, me, myself, they're all synonyms. They're all synonyms. They're all synonyms. I am an example of one of those. A dog is a person. A Buddha is a person. A hell being is a person. We're taking the given here that they're existing, okay? If they do, then they're a person. They're not a toilet. They're not a clock. They're not a camellia. They're a person. And the definition of a person is kind of boring. A person, their function is to create karma. That's the definition of the meaning of a person. To create causes. Something like that, I forgot. Whatever. So anyway, let's establish that we're in that category of phenomena. We're a person. Conventionally, we are a person. We are a self. We are an I. Okay? So let's use that example as the most tasty one. So the Buddha is saying, one of the deep delusions in the mind, which is also really a philosophical view, made up, a philosophical view, the Christianity has it, Hindus have it, Muslims have it, for example, Greeks have it. Any philosophy that establishes a world, they all have the view, and that's what he's arguing with, that there's something permanent, uncaused, that doesn't change, a soul. Greeks call it an essence. The Hindus call it an Atman. God, a creator, has the same characteristics. Being not caused, especially the creator. Buddha says no such thing, no such being can exist like that. There cannot be such an entity. Okay, philosophically, there are some phenomena, the way Buddhism describes, that are said to be having no causes, but it's like almost, it's a bit abstract, so we won't even think about that one. But in general, in terms of beings and things and potatoes and toilets and universes, impermanent phenomena that change from moment to moment. A being is an impermanent phenomenon, but the concept even of a creator is always just there, no cause. That's an impossibility, and I mean the philosophical discussions on this are vast. That has been clever. There cannot be a being who doesn't have a cause. It's an impossibility, Buddha would say. So the first argument he has to prove emptiness, that there is to prove that there can't be anything like that, is the discussion about dependent arising in terms of causes. So if we look at if we look at the way we feel, we say the words. We say it, I didn't ask to get born. That means, from my point of view, there are no causes of why I'm suffering. How dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. This is the proof, it seems to me, at the most obvious level, that we really believe that in me there are no causes for why that happens. We see there are causes, but they're all out there, not here. That's an impossibility, Buddha says. It's like saying you light a fire there when a fire comes over here. Not possible. When we look at the thing, there are causes in it for what it is. There have to be, logically. So the idea of a superior being, Buddha agrees, he uses the same term. The idea of omniscience, he agrees that is possible. The idea of infinite compassion, infinite power, Buddha agrees. But they're impermanent phenomena, and they're the quality of a person who was ordinary, who becomes perfect. Now that's the shockingest thing to say if you're a Christian or a Jew. Because that's insult, that makes God less. It makes God less, that he was ordinary and became perfect. No, Buddha says that's everything's like that. So Buddha agrees with superior being. He agrees with omniscience, all the qualities. But an ordinary person can become that. Whereas the Christian one is that it is like that. It's kind of up there, you know, permanent, uncaused. A soul is the same idea. Buddha disagrees with that completely. He's not being mean and nasty by disagreeing. He just says it's not possible, and he gives all the logical arguments. Why it's not possible. So the first one is to think about causes and conditions. So my feeling is, it seems to me very powerful, like I've been saying. I can certainly see this in my life. When I first heard the Buddhist teachings from Lama Zopa's mouth, you know, the Chenrezig Institute, I didn't understand 99% of what he was saying. I heard the words, but I couldn't get these weird concepts. I was drowning in medieval confusion. But every time I heard the word karma, oh, what's that? That's the one word I remember, karma. I liked it. I thought that was something, I liked karma, you know, as soon as I heard it. For me, it's been one of the most powerful parts of my attempting to practice, trying to practice, doing my best to practice. The view that I am the product of things that I have done before. Not, I am plonked on this planet by someone else unfairly. Which is the view we have. Look at it. That's why we have self-pity. That's why we have attachment. That's why we have anger. That's why we think, poor me. Exactly because of those views. So it is powerful just to think about karma, to posit it as a possibility, as a cause of me and my experiences. That it's to do what I did in the past. This is powerful. This cuts down, this breaks down the sense of the self-pity me. In other words, it is a logical argument. It's a logical argument to prove, aha, there's no self-pity me that didn't have causes. I find that very powerful. So this next level of dependent arising is arguing with another position, slightly more subtle, the Buddha also disagrees with. I think I'm conflating these two views a bit, actually. But this one goes like this, that I, cups, thermoses, exist in dependence upon their bits and pieces. Everything's made of parts. Well, this is also the view of God, of a soul. It is the Hindus talk about it's unitary, and I forget all the right words for it, but it has no parts. It's like this one entity. And even in science, we're looking for a partless, we're looking for like this subtlest, partless particle. We're kind of exploding things and spending billions of dollars, isn't it, trying to find atoms that you break down further until you can't break down and find further. Buddha says you'll never find such a thing. Everything that exists has parts. The billionth of the billionth of the billionth of a billionth of a second. I mean, these little clocks we have now are quicker and quicker, aren't they? You can never get to a point where you say that's the fundamental building block. And we're looking for that in science. That's meaning no parts. Not possible, Buddha says. And the only logical answer to prove this. So broadly speaking, roughly speaking, if we check, what Buddha's saying is this. Because of this ignorance in us, it causes us to believe 1,000,000,000% that there is in here somewhere, and here somewhere is very precise. These are the parameters, okay, of this I here. This I here does not include this, it doesn't include this. We know that. It's just the aggregates, the body and speech, the body and the mind. This is the components of Robina. These are the parts of Robina, body and mind. And then we can see there are millions of parts of the body and there are millions of parts of the mind. We can see this. We know this. So the two parts we're roughly talking here is body and mind. So they're the parameters of the name Robina. So what this ignorance causes us to believe, and then our language expresses it, and it causes us to feel the pain or the dramas, is that in here somewhere there is a very special part that kind of runs all the others. And that special part is called I. But it says, don't be ridiculous. So now the analysis we have to do in first theoretically and then in meditation is to do the argument goes, there either is an I we either believe there's an I that's separate from the other parts, which is the boss part that runs the other parts, and our language says that. I have a hand. I have a hand. That's two things. Or we say, where's all of me? I'm all of me, you know. So we have to search, Buddha says, for an I that's separate from the parts and an I that's oneness with the parts. And he'll say, when you come to the logical result, you will find there is neither. Just do the analysis of this one. It's very fascinating. This is a gross mistake. The subtlest has to come yet. Okay. What time do we start? Well, it's only an hour. It feels like about 4. It's only 10 o'clock. You okay? Shall I keep going? Okay, another 20 minutes, we'll have a tea break. Okay. So, okay, let's look at this one. One argument, this sounds ridiculous to us, they took one of the many logical arguments you have to use in the debates, is that if you're going to say there is something existing, then there's going to be one thing, and if there's, or there's more than one. There's only two options. There's one or there's more than one. That's it. The singular or plural. So listen. I'll make a statement, very simple statement. I will say the statement, I have a clock and a vase of flowers, okay? So forget the rest. Look at, when you hear the sound, there's a sound coming of the voice over here, so your eyes will go over here, you'll hear the sound, and because we speak English, and because we all have no way of defining these terms, when you hear me go, I have a clock and a vase of flowers, you will check here, and you'll go tick, oh, she's right. Because I just made a valid statement. I made a valid statement, and a valid statement, very simply, is one that's got a valid referent object, that's in sync with reality. Conventionally, we agree that's flowers. Conventionally, we agree that's a vase. Conventionally, we agree it's a clock. Conventionally, we agree there's a lie. So that's a valid statement, isn't it? Would you agree with that? So how many phenomena did I state? This is the point now. How many phenomena? I'll say it again. I have a vase of flowers, forget the two pairs. It's a vase, it's the name vase, forget the flowers. I have a vase, and a clock. I said three things, didn't I? There's a pronoun, I, and then two nouns. Vase and clock. So I made a valid statement, and you verify and you tick. So if I said, I have an elephant, you'll feel sorry for me. You look around, there's no elephant. So then, remember phenomena. Everything that exists in the universe is a phenomenon, an object of knowledge, an existent, etc. So, I is a phenomenon. A vase is a phenomenon. A clock is a phenomenon. And remember the definition. The definition of an existent is very tasty. And a definition of an existent, we're all synonyms, but they've got slightly different definitions. An existent is that which can be cognized by mind. That's what verifies something as existing. A valid state of mind. So we just verified very quickly, right there, conventionally, we're doing it past the test. She made a correct statement. And I've established three phenomena. Do we agree? I'll make another statement. I have a nose and a foot. How many phenomena? Eye, nose, foot. I've got my fingers arthritic, it won't go up. Okay? Three phenomena, do you agree? Eye, nose, foot. Three. Do you agree? Now let's search. But this was the first one, I forgot the analysis. Okay, the point here is this now, the three phenomena. Back to the first statement, okay. If it is true that there are three phenomena, this means, in terms of dependence, that they exist separately from each other. Which means in this framework, they don't depend upon each other for their existence. Do you accept that? That means the clock can break, fall on the floor, flower, the vase is happy. It didn't break, it's all right. Do you understand? The vase is cool. The vase didn't get affected, did it? The vase is not, it's all right, relax. This isn't a logical argument, so wait that. So you're trying to be a good girl, pick up a clock and dropped it. Let it be there, it's not burning, don't worry, look, it's fine. Don't worry about it, don't have a panic attack. Mummy, you shouldn't drop clocks and we'll pick them up again, you know? Relax. I'll drop another one. See, look, it makes you nervous, isn't it? We're trying to be good girls, you see. Are we communicating? It's clear that a clock does not depend upon a vase for its function, for its existence. This is a no-brainer. That, in this context, is one meaning of independent. They're independent of each other. They're separate. One can walk off, the other one can walk off the other way. Do you understand? Good. Same here. That's true. The third one, when he walks out the door, the vase is fine. The clock is still fine. The clock doesn't sort of stop when Robina walks out the door, you know. Do you understand? Okay, this is not with attachment. We believe we belong to each other. We believe there's nothing done. Anyway, be careful. But look at how, if you walk over, I weep. Because it's like you just took my hand with you. That's attachment. It's a misconception. Okay, now, I have a nose and a foot, or whatever I did have, a hand and a foot, let's say. 3 separate, I've got to prove exactly the same thing, because if it's a true statement, if that's a valid statement, we have to point out 3 phenomena that are independent of each other in terms of their function. Okay? So foot, easy peasy. Cut it off. Put it there. Hand is fine. Hand can still do its job of holding a cup. No probs. Foot can walk, but it doesn't need a hand. Cut the hand off, foot can still walk. No probs. They can do their jobs. They don't, in that simple sense, in terms of their function, they don't depend upon each other. Clear? That's 2 of the 3. Now we have to point out the third phenomenon. It's called I, that doesn't depend upon, for its function, a foot, a hand, or any other of the thousands of parts in here. And we believe there's one there somewhere. Running the show. Buddha says, like he said about a creator, we don't need a boss running the show. Sentient beings do fine creating their own reality. Well, in a simple sense here, a person doesn't need a boss running the show. The parts do fine all working together. It's a really interesting concept. So, of course, we believe there's an I. When we say, I mean, look what happens. This is a perfect example. You know, Fred punches me in the nose, and I'll be crying. Hey, what's wrong with me? Fred punched me! No, he didn't. He punched your nose. Be precise, please. So, you know, this is the point now. Now, this is the point. If there is an I in there that is separate from the nose, which is what we secretly believe, we believe the I owns the nose. It's my nose, back off. We believe there's an I that owns the nose. Now, this is the point. If there is an I that isn't the nose, that's separate from the nose, then the I won't mind when the nose gets hurt. Just like the vase doesn't mind when the clock breaks, because they're separate. If they were separate, you wouldn't say, I am hurt. How dare you punch me? I nearly had a crash. I nearly fell off the mountain. No, you wouldn't. You'd say the nose is hurt. The body fell off the mountain. That is precise. But because we believe in this fantasy I. But we've never proved it. And Buddhists have got to prove it, I'm sorry. Because if it were separate, this is the point, if it were separate, if there were a piece in there, like the foot and the hand are separate, like the eye and the hand are separate, so if the hand gets cut, you wouldn't, the eye would be looking on feeling sad for the hand, but it wouldn't be feeling any pain. But look how we talk. Look how we talk. I am in pain, and it's true. So conventionally, Buddha is agreeing that there is an I, but it's not separate. And you won't find it among the parts, and you can't say that it is the parts, which is sounding infuriating, like make up your mind, Buddha. But that's what we've got to understand. This is a gross example. So the point is, when we've proven experientially in meditation, after many years of practice and study, that there is no independent I, and this is the grossest level, then that's when suffering stops. That's when fear stops. That's when fear stops. So now, full stop, turn the page, new chapter. Let's do an analysis now of the word emptiness, which we get utterly confused about, and how it isn't nihilism, and how it refers to this, what we just described. Okay. The word emptiness really throws us. It's a shorthand. It's just a massive culture for thousands of years, and then they've summed it up with this. It's like saying relativity. Oh yeah, Einstein talks about relativity. I can say that. What's it mean, Robina? Oh, I don't know. I've got to study several, volumes of literature for many years to get it, don't I? Same here. So, but let's look at the word in general, simple speaking, the word. We use it in our daily lives. It's a concept and we get it very easily. And you'll see. I'll pick up my cup, Oh, my cup's empty. We get that, don't we? And this is the point here. It's empty of what I was expecting it to have. This is a crucial point to get. It's empty of what I thought should have been there. I was expecting my hot water. Do you understand? If you go to the crockery shop, you don't say, oh, Mummy, all the cups are empty. Because you don't expect tea in the crockery shop, do you? You get my point? So this is a really important point, how we use this word. We say something's empty. It's only you say that because you've expected something to be there. And you get a shock when you discover it isn't. Can you hear that? You look at your bank and you really believe there's, $10,000. I think you need $10,000 to go to pilgrimage with me if you're Australian. It's only $7 US, but now the dollar's getting terrible. Just imagine you come into the pilgrimage with me in October and you know you've got your $10,000, you've saved it. You've saved every penny you know and you're getting ready to spend it. And you look in the bank and there's nothing and there's a zero written. Now believe me, you won't go, oh, no dollars in the bank, that's cool. No, you won't say that. You'll have a panic attack. Oh my God, there's no $7,000, where's my 7,000 precious dollars? Where's my $7,000? You'll say, my bank account is empty. This is the crucial point. My cup is empty. Of what? Water. My bank account is empty. Of what? Dollars. So you say it only because you expected dollars. Only because you expected dollars. So now that's the first point. Now the next point is this. Use this, okay, remember the Buddha says, everything we cognize. Okay, the mind always cognizes a phenomenon. It's like the mind, the way the mind functions, it cognizes nouns. It's a way of saying it. A thing. It cognizes phenomena, objects of knowledge, existent, these things. So, if there is water in my cup, and I look, my mind is cognizing the presence of water, isn't it? So water is a phenomenon, we agree? Water is a phenomenon, because my mind can cognize water in my tea. Very simple, in my cup, very simple, isn't it? Water is a phenomenon, and the water exists in my cup. So if I'm expecting water, and I look and I get a shock, and I go, oh my God, it's empty. When I'm turning that into a noun phrase, and what I just cognized is the phenomenon called the emptiness of water. Can you hear that? Something clever. This is the way to think about it. What you just cognized in that bank account was not no dollars. That's nihilism. What you cognized is the emptiness, the absence of your precious, precious $7,000. Can you hear that? Can you hear that? There's a big difference, isn't there? If I look in the bank and I have no expectation of $10,000, what I will cognize is zero. So using the analogy here, that's like nihilism. There's no dollars. There's no dollars. There's no dollars. I will cognize truth. In that case, there are no dollars. But what you cognize is not the same phenomenon. The phenomenon that appears to your mind that you cognize is the absence of your precious $7,000. Can you hear that? Let's say you believe this is a better example because that's a sad emptiness to find. You don't want to find the absence of $7,000. You want your damn money, But look at the absence of something that you're happy to get rid of. Let's say you think you've got cancer. Let's say you think you've got cancer. And you're completely, you know you've got cancer. You're getting ready to goodbye, you're going to the doctor, you're having all the treatment, everyone's freaking out and sad, and husband, the kids, and your neighbours and everything, and you resign from your job, and you've got cancer. You're convinced you've got cancer. You think every day, I'm dying. This intense process you're going through because of the presence of cancer. And you go to the doctor, and he says there's no cancer. You'd be very excited, wouldn't you? You'd be very happy, you'd be joyful, blissful. You can't believe it. So what you just then cognize is the emptiness of cancer. The emptiness just means absent. Don't think it's holy. It's just another word for absence. You just cognized the absence of something you thought you had. Can you hear that? It's not being clever. This is necessary thinking. This is the way they present things. You just cognised. This is a delicious absence to cognise. This is a joyful absence, the absence of cancer. And now you're joyful. Now, I haven't got cancer, have I? Let's say I've got no cancer. I'm not noticing the absence of cancer because I never bloody had it in the first place. I never thought I had it. So I just take it as a given. I don't notice the absence of cancer. If I'm married to Fred for 42 years, and then one day I come home and I find there's a note that Fred's left me, believe me, every day for months, who knows, I will only notice the absence of Fred in my house, won't I? It's a real phenomenon that I cognise, isn't it? Because I expect and want Fred to be there. Can you hear that? But if you visit me one day and you've never heard of Fred, you will never notice the absence of Fred, because you don't expect Fred. You don't notice the absence of cancer. So merely not having cancer doesn't mean it's not you don't notice the absence of something is always something the absence of something you thought you had, or that you didn't want you had, or you wish you didn't have, or you understand my point? It's not just clever. So all Buddha is saying is, since beginning this time, this ego grasping is causing us to believe in the presence of a fantasy I. So we've got to understand that fantasy I, that's the independent I. But just call it a fantasy I. An I, that's fantasy I in here, a fantasy I. A fantasy I, an I that has never, doesn't, and could never exist. Water could exist, cancer could exist, $10,000 could exist. But this fantasy I could never exist, so it's a much more dramatic absence. So since beginning this time, we have believed in that fantasy I. So when you finally got your first moment of non-conceptual direct insight into emptiness, what you've just cognised for the first time directly and experientially is that the absence, with absolute certainty, of that I which you have believed in since the beginning of this time. And Lama Zopa says the best yogis have unbelievable fear. But it's a good fear. The best of all yogis have complete bliss. They've finally seen the truth, that the I that has been believing since the beginning of this time, which is the belief of which is the basis of attachment, anger, pride, jealousy, hell realms, God realms, human realms, beginning of this lifetimes, all that crumbles into nonsense, because the thing that has upheld them and as the cause of all of it has disappeared. The I never exists, so it doesn't disappear, the belief in it disappears. Can you hear my words? That's the emptiness of the independent I. You just realise that that I does not exist. So give that a name. The phenomenon is called the emptiness of the independent I. Can you hear me, people? Can you hear that? You asked the question, can you hear that? So now, what's the mistake of nihilism? This is the mistake, it's a simple example. So Buddha says we've got to look inside here for the I that's separate from the parts. One example, one analysis we have to do. So the simple way you say it, like His Holiness says, you look inside and you chuck out the knee, you chuck out the nose, you chuck out the pee-pee, you chuck out the caca, looking for this thing in the drawer. Where's the damned eye in here? And you chuck out all the bits and you go, oh well, there's no eye, what the hell, I might as well kill myself. That's nihilism. That's not what you find. When we do the analysis, what we'll finally realise is not no I, but is the absence of the fantasy I. The absence of the thing you thought was there. So the same with the $10,000. When you look in the bank account, if you ask me to look in it, I will see truth. There's no dollars. There's just no dollars. That's nihilism, no dollars. You won't know there's no dollars. You won't see no dollars. What do you see?
The absence.
Of 10,000. Isn't that a more rich, it's a much more powerful object, isn't it? It's all referenced on what you expected to be there. Merely seeing there's nothing there is nihilism. That's not what you cognise. You cognise the absence of what you thought was there, and that's not nihilism.
So emptiness is not nothing.
That's right. It's the absence of what you thought was there. The absence of the fantasy that we made up. That's the point. It's much more rich. Can you hear that?
Yes.
That's what you remember. And then we're going to, after lunch or after tea break, oh, where's my clock? Well, here it is. Oh, not bad. Thank you so much. Still fine, still working. Look, 10:25. Drop it again.
that our last clock?
So I'll buy you another one. So, you'll have a tea break now in a minute. So, can you hear the point? We've got to get used to this thinking. Just getting used to this thinking, you know.
What's wrong with nihilism though? Because nihilism's a truth as well, isn't it?
Not in this context here. In this simple example, there's no tea here. Just using simple examples. And there's no dollars. But that's not what's meant here. Never. It's never true. No. In this context, nihilism is no such thing as no I. There is not no I. There is no inherent I. There's not no I. In nihilism, there's no I. But emptiness is referring to the absence of the fantasy I. Can you hear the difference again? So the absence of a fantasy I, another word is the independent I. That's all. There's no independent I. There's no I that doesn't, there's no independent. I've got to get used to that meaning. It's not merely no I. That is nihilism. And the meaning, we say it all the time. Even, we all the time are misunderstanding emptiness. We go, well, everything's empty, so it doesn't matter anyway. That's nihilism. That's not the meaning at all. When we say it's empty, this is the point now about its relationship to dependent arising. But in reality, come to the same thing. They come to the same thing. We understand the correct meaning. They come to the same thing. So every time we think, okay, use a simple example. Every example again. All right. You're colourblind. What's your name?
Shannon.
Shannon. Okay.
I am colourblind.
Pardon?
I am.
Okay. I don't know how colourblindness works. But let's pretend it works like this. Let's pretend that you see yellow. Just pretend, okay? Every time red is presented to you, because of your mucky eyes,
It's completely, what I perceive as red is not what you perceive.
what do you perceive? How do you know? How do I know?
Apparently, your reds are much more vivid.
How do you see it? Describe what you see.
I just see sort of maroni sort of...
What?
A subtle maroni sort of colour.
Maroni, okay, good enough. Let's pretend it's yellow, you see. That's an easy example. So let's pretend, because your eyes are mucky, every time red is presented, yellow appears to you. You get my point?
Yes.
Let's pretend that's possible. Well, you've heard that it's wrong. You try to act like you know what the right colour is, but you always, we can't force you to believe it. It's not fair to you. So we can try and fix your eyes. Let's pretend we can fix your eyes. Let's pretend we can fix your eyes. Let's pretend we can fix the problem. So we fix your eyes. Now, I'll present the cup again. So the normal conclusion would be you'd go, oh, look at that, fancy that, it is red. How interesting. We would think you'd see that, wouldn't we? Do you agree?
Yes.
But you won't. This is the point. You're going to go, oh my God, it's not yellow. Why do you say that? Why? Why do you say it's not yellow? The same as the $10,000. You expected yellow. It's all based on, it's a concept. It's a concept, Shannon. You've got the concept in your mind from countless years of always seeing yellow. So you believe yellow, you expected $10,000, you believe in $10,000, you expect an inherent me, you believe in inherent me, you know there's an inherent me, and you get the shock of your life. So the first this is the point now, the first realization you get is the absence of yellow. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
So now, once you calm down and you realise the emptiness of yellow, when your mind's relaxed, what will you then see? The truth. The conventional truth that it's red. That's the two truths. So Tsongkhapa says, Buddha says, there's a lie in the mind that's made up of fantasy I. Speak simple. We've made up the presence of a fantasy I that has never, isn't, and could never exist. It's a dramatic thing. So once we've seen the truth at a subtle level of our mind in Shine, in meditation, once we've seen nakedly, directly, experientially, with certainty, the absence of that I, the absence of that I, the absence of that I, you got me? The absence of that I, it's a mind-boggling realization. Then you will realize dependent arising. What does exist, which is dependent arising. But the subtle dependent arising, which we haven't going to talk about yet, is called newly labelled. Newly labelled I. This is really subtle for us. So once you've seen your mistake and you've cognised the emptiness of yellow, when your mind comes, that then gets you to see the conventional truth of the red. So here we see the absence of the fantasy, which is emptiness. That leads us to see the presence of the conventional eye. Can you hear those words, people? You see the conventional eye, which is merely labelled eye, which, as Lama Zopa says, is so subtle, it's as if it doesn't exist. So this seems more, it is way more nuanced and more subtle than saying there's no eye or there is an eye. These are the gross, two extreme views. There's art, there's nihilism, there's nothing. Or this is the one, this is the Christian teaching, the Muslim teaching, the soul teaching, the essence teaching, the Atman teaching. There's something there that's permanent, intrinsic, in itself, of itself, it's kind of up there special, holy, perfect. Fantasy, Buddha says. There isn't such a thing. This is over-exaggerating the status of the I, this is under-exaggerating the status of the I. It's called nihilism and eternalism. They're extreme views. They underestimate, overestimate. The reality is middle way. There is no I from its own side. There is no intrinsic I. And that proves there is a dependent arising I that does but not concrete, and they're both really subtle. So every time we think this, it should tell us there is that. Every time we think dependent arising, we should say to ourselves that means it's empty. Every time we hear empty, we should say that means it's dependent arising. And these come together gradually, and when we're a Buddha, the two truths simultaneously. That's how they talk. Roughly like that. Are you communicating? Shannon?
Is it fair to say that nihilism assumes that nothing is a phenomenon that exists? And so,
yes, that's right.
But I can't grasp how nothing can actually...
It can't. That's the point. It can't. That's the whole point. It can't. It's a meaningless concept.
Yeah.
Finally, it's a meaningless thing. The Buddha would say there can't be such a thing. Conventionally you can say there's no money. That's easy. Conventionally you say there's no tea. It's a simple example. But for there to be nothingness... you see, this is interesting. This might sound, I'm not trying to sound like sectarian here, but one of the interpretations of Buddhism on this planet, I'm not being rude. If you're a Theravada Buddhist, don't think I'm being insulting here. But this is really the Mahayana analysis. The Theravada Buddhist view of when you've achieved liberation, that even virtuous karma ceases. So when you die, everything disappears. There is literally nothing left. The Mahayana view is that's nihilism. There is literally nothing left. The mind and everything ceases. You are blown out like a candle and there is nothing left. For the Mahayana view, that is an example of nihilism. Or you can even argue, roughly speaking, the materialist view is nihilism.
So in Theravada,
yeah.
to exit samsara is to become nothing.
That's what I'm saying. That's the interpretation. The Mahayana view, the wisdom wing is the same teachings, but the Mahayana view, Dalai Lama said one time, he laughed, said, we Mahayanas have a problem with that, he said, he laughed, you know. So I'm not being rude, it's just different interpretations of Buddhism on the planet. And definitely the Mahayana would argue that the mind is endless, it can never end. Not possible. And it never begins, never ends. There cannot be nothingness. There can't be such a phenomenon. There can't be. That is literally the meaning of nihilism. So I'd say that the materialist view would be nihilism as well. Your bunch of things, you're like a thermos or a piece of metal and you die, you know, that's it, nothing. No consequences, nothing. That's a nihilistic philosophy. Nothing matters. Nothing matters is nihilism. Nothing has consequences is nihilism. Oh, I can think what I like. That means there's no consequences. That's nihilism. That's a nihilistic philosophy. And look at, why don't we kill ourselves? Look at this. You see what I'm saying? So, thinking about emptiness tells us that things are dependent arising. And thinking about dependent arising tells us there is no independent I. So empty means empty of being independent. And dependence arising is that everything is interdependent. So they prove each other. They're flip sides of the same coin. Justin had a question?
Does that mean in Theravada there's no nirvana?
Tell that what?
If someone has achieved enlightenment and just evaporated into nothing.
Okay, this view in Buddhism is that once you've removed all the delusions from your mind, you've also removed the mind. So when you die, everything disappears, including your mind. There is literally nothing left. That's one interpretation on the planet of Buddhist teachings. The Mahayana view would disagree with that. That's too extreme. That's extreme of nihilism. They would say that's not like that. That's what I'm saying. Can you hear those words? So the Buddhist view is when you've worked on your mind and you've removed delusions from your mind, your virtuous mind, your wise mind is what's left. That can never end. But this other view says even the virtues finish.
So that means they haven't reached
What,
nirvana.
darling?
Does that mean they have not reached nirvana if there's nothing there?
No, it's not a question of that.
Right.
The Buddha's view would be you have realised emptiness, yes. But the Mahayana view would be that consciousness doesn't disappear, it just went into a subtle state of bliss. And is existing still. But that has to be visible to some very subtle clairvoyance. So maybe the people who have the view that you turn into nothing just don't have enough subtle vision to see that your consciousness, when you do stop coming back, you do achieve nirvana, you have realised emptiness, but in your mind, so you stop being reborn. You don't disappear, you just don't get reborn in gross bodies again. Your mind goes to this is the Mahayana interpretation. Your mind stays in a subtle state of bliss for a long time, and then Buddha comes along, taps you on the shoulder, says, okay, honey, come back onto the Mahayana path and become a bodhisattva and help sentient beings. Do you hear the difference? That's all. Okay.
Wouldn't the end imply...
What, darling?
Wouldn't an end imply the beginning?
I can't hear you, what?
Wouldn't the, like in Theravada view, wouldn't the end imply a beginning as well?
No. Doesn't. Why should it? No, that's not logical. Listen, if you got a chicken that came from an egg, and you got an egg that came from a chicken, but you can bake this egg anytime you damn well like and never get a chicken again. So they're different. Do you see?